Few names evoke such a chilling mix of fear and awe as Joseph Stalin. A dictator of unparalleled ruthlessness, he dragged the Soviet Union into modernity at a horrifying cost. Millions perished under his iron rule. Their lives were extinguished in the gulags, lost to forced famine, or erased in the paranoid purges that marked his reign. Yet he transformed a backward nation into a superpower. He led his people to victory in the face of Nazi aggression. Stalin's legacy remains a study in contrasts. It is a stark reminder that even the most horrific evil can coexist with undeniable achievements. Born Iosif Yugashvili in the humble Georgian town of Gori, Stalin's early life was harsh. His father, a cobbler, was a violent drunk. Poverty was a constant companion. These formative years instilled in him a deep resentment of authority and a yearning for a more just world. He found solace in education, excelling in his studies and discovering the writings of Karl Marx. Marxism, with its promise of a classless society, ignited a fire in young Stalin's heart. He embraced it with the fervor of a religious convert, dedicating his life to the revolutionary cause. The Russian Empire in the early 20th century was ripe for revolution. Tsar Nicholas II's autocratic rule and the suffering of the masses created fertile ground for radical ideas. Stalin, now operating under the name Stalin, meaning man of steel, threw himself into the burgeoning Bolshevik movement. He proved a shrewd operator, skilled at navigating the treacherous world of underground politics. He organized bank robberies to fund the party, earning a reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency. Stalin's organizational talents and unwavering loyalty to Lenin, the Bolshevik leader, did not go unnoticed. He steadily climbed the ranks, becoming a key figure in the party's inner circle. The 1917 Bolshevik Revolution catapulted Stalin and his comrades to power. The Tsar was overthrown, and Russia embarked on a radical experiment in communist governance. Yet the triumph was short-lived. Civil war erupted, pitting the Bolsheviks against a coalition of anti-communist forces. Stalin played a crucial role in this conflict, demonstrating his ruthlessness and military acumen. He emerged from the civil war as a hardened leader, his authority solidified by the bloodshed. With Lenin's health failing, a power struggle erupted within the party. Stalin, a master of political maneuvering, outmaneuvered his rivals, securing his position as Lenin's successor. Section 5. The Terror Consumes All. Stalin's rise to power marked the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in human history. His ascent was not just a political shift but a harbinger of widespread fear and oppression. Driven by paranoia and an insatiable lust for absolute control, he unleashed the Red Terror upon the Soviet Union. This period was characterized by a relentless purge of anyone who could potentially challenge his authority. Anyone perceived as a threat, real or imagined, was eliminated. The mere suspicion of dissent was enough to seal one's fate. Old Bolsheviks, war heroes, intellectuals, writers, artists, and even those who had once been his allies were not spared. The purges were indiscriminate and ruthless, and ordinary citizens were swept up in the maelstrom of violence. Show trials were staged, often with predetermined outcomes. These trials were a grotesque parody of justice. Confessions were extracted through torture, with many enduring unimaginable pain and suffering. The methods used were brutal and inhumane. Millions were sent to the Gulag, a vast network of forced labor camps. These camps were places of extreme hardship, where prisoners faced grueling labor, starvation, and disease. The Great Terror, a period of unparalleled brutality, saw the extermination of entire communities. Families were torn apart, and the social fabric of the nation was irreparably damaged. Fear became a way of life as Stalin's paranoia knew no bounds. Propaganda was used to maintain an image of infallibility, while the reality was one of pervasive fear and repression. The terror consumed all, leaving a legacy of pain and suffering that would be felt for generations. Section 6. Progress built on bones. While the terror raged, Stalin embarked on a program of rapid industrialization. He believed that the Soviet Union, lagging behind the West, needed to modernize at breakneck speed to survive. The collectivization of agriculture, a brutal campaign to consolidate individual farms into state-controlled collectives, was implemented with ruthless efficiency. Millions of peasants were dispossessed of their land and livelihoods. Resistance was met with brutal force, leading to widespread famine, particularly in Ukraine, where millions perished in the Holodomor, a man-made catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Yet despite the human cost, Stalin's industrial policies yielded undeniable results. The Soviet Union underwent a remarkable transformation, transforming itself from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Section 7. The Great Patriotic War. This chapter delves into one of the most significant and devastating conflicts in human history. In 1941, Hitler's armies stormed across the Soviet border, shattering the fragile peace that had existed between the two nations. The surprise attack caught the Soviet Union off guard, leading to a rapid and brutal advance by the German forces. The Great Patriotic War, as it became known in the Soviet Union, was a titanic struggle that would decide the fate of nations. It was a conflict marked by immense battles, strategic maneuvers, and a level of destruction previously unseen in warfare. Stalin, initially caught off guard by the invasion, quickly realized the gravity of the situation. He rallied his people to fight for their very survival, delivering impassioned speeches and making critical decisions to bolster the Soviet defense. The Soviet people endured unimaginable hardships. Families were torn apart, homes were destroyed, and the constant threat of death loomed over every citizen. Despite these challenges, the spirit of the Soviet people remained unbroken. Cities were reduced to rubble, millions perished, and the country teetered on the brink of collapse. The scale of destruction was staggering, with entire communities wiped out and the landscape of the Soviet Union forever altered. Yet they fought on with astonishing resilience. The Soviet soldiers, alongside the civilians who supported the war effort, displayed a level of bravery and determination that would become legendary. The Red Army, bolstered by American aid and fueled by a burning hatred for the invaders, slowly turned the tide. The Lend-Lease program provided crucial supplies and equipment, enabling the Soviet forces to mount a more effective resistance. From the siege of Leningrad to the Battle of Stalingrad, the Soviet people displayed extraordinary courage and sacrifice. These battles were among the most brutal and pivotal of the war, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The resilience and tenacity of the Soviet forces during these critical moments were instrumental in ultimately repelling the German invasion and turning the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. Section 8. An iron grip on the world stage. The Soviet victory in World War II came at a staggering cost, but it also elevated the nation to superpower status. Stalin, hailed as the architect of victory, emerged from the conflict with his prestige at its zenith. The war had devastated much of Europe, creating a power vacuum that Stalin was quick to fill. He installed communist regimes in Eastern Europe, establishing a Soviet sphere of influence that stretched from Berlin to the Pacific. The Cold War, a tense standoff between the communist East and the capitalist West, had begun. Stalin's paranoia and distrust of the West fueled an arms race and a climate of fear that gripped the world. Section 9. A legacy of fear and admiration. Joseph Stalin died in 1953, leaving behind a legacy as complex as it was contradictory. His death marked the end of an era, but the echoes of his rule continued to reverberate through history. He was a tyrant who presided over one of the most brutal regimes in history, responsible for the deaths of millions. The purges, the forced labor camps, and the Great Terror are stark reminders of the lengths he would go to maintain his grip on power. Yet, he was also a shrewd leader who transformed the Soviet Union into a global superpower. Under his rule, the Soviet Union emerged as a formidable force on the world stage, playing a crucial role in the defeat of Nazi Germany during World War II. He dragged a backward nation into the 20th century, albeit at an unimaginable human cost. The rapid industrialization and modernization came at the expense of millions of lives, but it also laid the foundation for the Soviet Union's future achievements in science, technology, and space exploration. His legacy continues to be debated by historians and remembered with a mixture of horror and grudging respect by the people he ruled. Some view him as a necessary evil who brought progress, while others see him as a monstrous figure whose actions can never be justified. One thing is certain: the shadow of Stalin's reign continues to loom large over Russia and the world, a chilling reminder of the seductive allure of absolute power and the terrible price of unchecked ambition. His story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of totalitarianism and the fragility of human rights in the face of ruthless authority.